Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Find and Follow podcast, where we are all about helping you find and follow Jesus in your everyday life. We're here today, and it's the two of us. It's Kyle and Scott bringing the episode. Craig kind of developed the old flu bug, I guess, last night.
The old fall flu, as they say. Do they say that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But it is going around a little bit.
Because it's fall.
Well, no, I think it's because the flu's back.
Oh.
It took a couple years off. And now it's back. So now we got flus going around.
Okay.
I can tell you my recent flu story.
I think we're good.
You're good?
I've heard it multiple times. One while I was eating, and I was...
I've got pictures.
So if people are like, oh, let's sit down to a podcast and, while we're eating lunch, on my lunch break or something.
Yeah, be encouraged by it.
Yeah, we don't need to hear Scott's...
You don't need...
No.
It wasn't me. It was one of my children.
Yep.
Puked all over himself.
Okay, are you going there? You're going to keep going?
No, that's it.
Okay.
I won't even put up... I got a couple of great pictures I could have put up on YouTube. It's a whole thing, but I'll spare you. It's been going around a little bit, I guess. But with the weather being so nice, you feel like it shouldn't be like...
still summer.
You know what it is, though? I blame the school system. My kids go there and get germs.
Oh, for sure.
There's a few germs
A few hundred
around.
kids, snot-nosed kids running around.
And it's great. As a parent, you get to say all the parent things. You're like, wash your hands. Did you wash your hands? You know how many times I say wash your hands? When you go to school, make sure you wash your hands multiple times. Wash your hands.
Douse them in...
Yeah. Don't touch your body. Just wash your hands. Don't touch your face. It's a lot of that.
Got the old backpack keychain thing with the Purell on it.
Hand sanitizer.
Yeah. Douse them in that.
Yeah. Do you remember when people were washing their hands till they bled?
Yeah.
Where are those people at these days? Back to
I don't
washing them
yeah.
randomly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'm a good. I don't think I'm a good. You don't want to talk about puking. You don't want to talk about COVID.
I don't think I'm a good hand washer. I've never been I don't know. But I'm not sick all the time. So.
Well.
Wash your hands.
Wash your hands.
Wash your hands, folks.
Wash your hands
and say your prayers, because germs and Jesus is everywhere. What's your...
No, yeah.
Something like that?
That's a sign, sure. It's in my bathroom.
Yeah.
Let's not.
Okay.
Let's not. Well, anyways, welcome aboard as we're jumping in. I thought it would be fun today with the two of us talk about this last series we've been in at Mission Church. Your future self will thank you. And self-discipline, self-control. It's this beautiful gift that God gives us, part of the fruit of following Jesus and His Spirit inside of us. And it's one of those that usually kind of gets a little underplayed, overlooked, maybe a little it's the addendum.
Yeah, burdensome. More like you made that point when you talked about it. If you look at, Galatians, the fruit of the Spirit, they're all like, yes, I want that. That is
love.
Peace, joy, patience, kindness, goodness. You're like, yes, sign me up.
Gentleness.
Yes, let's go.
Yes, I'm in on all of that.
And it sounds like more of that's the things that following Jesus will make happen in your life. That, my story was, coming to Jesus and experiencing that joy and that peace that was missing from my life, and was trying to find it with, friendships, and why am I quote unquote sad? And I had a great childhood and I wasn't depressed or sad, but I did feel like there was something missing, and I was trying to, and so it's a lot of people's story. You come to Jesus, you find this fruit in your life that's like, this is it. And then you get to self-control and you're like, what? That sounds like a chore. That sounds like something I got to do.
Right.
And it sounds burdensome. And again, as we've been talking through Matthew, this legal system, and I don't know about that one. I think it's the outlier a little bit as we look at them.
A little bit, and it seems like the one that takes more work from the surface level, a little more effort, and it kind of feels like more me than Jesus, and that's why we just spent some weeks on it, because it is so vital that we do need self-discipline, and love takes work. Love is a choice, and when you start to talk about that. That was like, oh, okay, so it's in that same vein where you can't fall in love. That is not, I don't care what Hallmark says. I don't care what your book says. There's no, we just fell into love.
Or fell out of love.
And then we don't know, magically we just fell into love, and then just, it went south and we just fell out of love.
Yeah.
Love is patient. That's not just I guess I'm just patient today. No, it's a gift of God. It's a fruit of the Spirit. It's my working with God in me to go, I'm going to choose to think about their interests over my own. It's like what is faithfulness? Continually choosing to be there and to be present, like to follow God and to be a friend to a person, even in the midst of like disagreements or conflict or whatever. Like you're just distant because you moved away and they're in a different city now, and you're like, yeah, we're still friends. It's just we don't see each other as much. Like faithfulness to like that takes a lot of work. That's effort.
Yeah.
But is it God or is it me?
Yeah,
The answer
absolutely.
is yes.
Yes.
That's
And those, again, when we look at those, and Paul, as he's writing those, specifically that middle chunk that you reference, are all relational ideas. And anybody knows that relationships take work, right? He's talking to this group of people who are jacking up their relationships, and he uses the term biting and devouring each other. Like you guys are at each other's throats, and you're angry and bitter and resentful, and he goes, this is what following Jesus is about. God will produce these things, but you got to tend the garden and you got to make it an environment for fruit. And all those relational ideas, faithfulness, kindness, gentleness, those are all relational things that take work. And for whatever relationship you have with your kids, with your spouse, with your coworkers, it's not just easy to be faithful. It's easy to just go, yeah, I'll be there. Nah, I don't feel like it. I'm not going to show up, or I'm not going to do what I said I was going to do, because it's hard and it takes hard work. So the more you dive into it and look at it, you're like, no, these are all things that take an abundance of God's love and mercy and grace and lavishing these things on us, check. But they also take a lot of us going, yep, I'm in this, and I'm going to put in the work, and I'm going to do what I need to do. So,
and we spent, and I think we spent enough time on it. It's sticky enough for us and for others. But is it me working or is it God working?
yes.
Yes, it's both. And even to the point that that's not even necessarily a helpful question. It's not even necessarily a helpful. I think it's not a helpful viewpoint to go, okay, let's cut this, let's divide this. Like, what part do I get credit for? What's my share and what's God's share? That's such a modern, unhelpful, like non-way of Jesus.
Yeah.
Because Paul said, Galatians 2:20, he goes, you know what? He might even say it's not even me, to the point of I no longer live, but it's Christ that lives in me. The life I live now in the body is like through Jesus and in faith. And so, because he loves me and he died for me. So
Yes,
it's not even me in essence, but then same time Paul goes, hey, there's times where it's me, and it's me saying yes to sin as the authority in my life.
Yeah, I think it's a question the biblical authors never pose, and they're comfortable with that. That I think, again, like you say, it's a modern view that we try to draw these lines and ask these questions that don't really need to be asked. We're drawing lines where lines don't need to be drawn. And I get where we're going. It's like, well, what do I do and what does God do? And sometimes, we try to do God's part, or we try to get, blur the lines. And so I understand. But yeah, I agree. It's at the end of the day, and we pit things against each other that aren't meant to be pit against each other. They work in tandem and in harmony, and we try to draw a line and separate them out. And it's like, it's like we want to make them oil and water and put them at this, like, well, it's all part of the same thing, but they're separate a little bit. And again, Paul and most of the New Testament authors, they're comfortable with this a little bit ambiguity in understanding. But again, back to Matthew and Jesus's thing, he's coming to this kingdom, and he's like, we're going to do this together, and this new covenant and new relationship is us together, and it's us in the kingdom. It's me as the king, but you as the royal priesthood. It's us as the body of Christ. Like, it's my body and you, and is it you or me? Yes, it's us, right? And so I think when we try to separate those and piece it out, it's way more unhelpful than it is ever helpful.
Mm-hmm. So we talked a lot about making or identifying some cues. Like, we're trying to get real practical in this. The concept of self-control can be a little too maybe rigid and legalistic, and here's the rules. So we didn't really start there. We started with God's desire for us, and it's a gift, and it's us working together. But then there are cues in our lives that are good, that indicate, just set us off on like a good habit, and there's some stuff that we need to reinvent. And I think one of the ways, so let's talk about that, like what's been helpful for you, maybe something new, something reinforced, something in your life. But also, I think about it in this way, is just making like rules for yourself, like to follow Jesus and go. So like one of the rules, if you will, at our house is we don't talk to each other that way. We talk to each other with kindness. We And so we literally say those things out loud.
Yeah.
And I bet a lot of people do. And I think it's super helpful. You go, you just make a rule, and you
Yep.
can tell other people that, and people are generally very respectful
Yep.
with those. When you go, oh, that's something I don't do.
Yeah.
They're like, okay,
Yeah, we think about it with life, right? Like, hey, our house is a no shoe house, right?
Yeah.
If I go to your mom and dad's house, I know I'm taking off my shoes. This is just
yeah, you can get away. I mean,
Okay.
tile. If you stay in the tile,
I'm taking off my shoes if I go to your parents' house.
Sometime-
I'm not comfortable enough as you are to bend the rules. It's a no shoe house, right? And so, but it's not uncomfortable for me. I think the first time it's like, hey, this is just we just don't do this. We don't walk.
Right.
Okay, we don't walk on the carpet with our shoes.
yes,
And so, but yeah, in life, like, hey, yeah, I just don't do that. I'm comfortable, and I think we get awkward. Am I going to offend people, or is it going to be weird? And people care a lot less than we think they do. If we're just, like, I mean, like big things, like, hey, yeah, sorry, we're going out. I don't drink. That's just me. It's a rule. I mean, not that this is bad. It's just this is where I'm at, and maybe it's because my past or whatever. Like, hey, I don't go to those places. People invite you. Like, sorry, I don't put myself in those situations. We don't talk to people like that. And it's going to be awkward if I bring this up or if I say this at work. Like, sorry, no, I'm not comfortable with that. Yeah, we have rules because and I love, I don't think I said it in the series, but I love what Tim Mackey, the Bible Project, the way he says it is we have to set these cues and these rules or whatever. We have to do these in our moments of sanity, because in our moments of insanity, if we don't have guardrails and boundaries, we're just going to go through it. So I have a rule. I don't drink, because then when I'm tempted to drink in my insanity where my flesh is going, hey, drinks a 6-pack every night, I go, no, I have a rule. I don't do this, right? When I'm tempted to go look at this thing, I have rules. I don't go to these websites. I don't spend this much time on social media. I don't follow these accounts, whatever it is, right? In my moments of sanity, because I'm going to have some moments of insanity where I'm selling myself, where sin nature's trying to get me, where the enemy's trying to lie to me, where I'm insane. I'm outside of myself, Paul says. I do all these things. I'm insane. And so in my moments of sanity, in the morning, in our family, whatever, we're going to set these rules. This is what we do, because there's going to be moments of insanity where we're going to want to lash out. And we're, hey, well, remember, our sanity, our rules said we don't talk to each other like that. We don't do this. We don't do that. Because we're all going to get there. And I spelled it out a little bit, right, with our emotions, and if we're tired, and if we're hungry, and if we're lonely, or we're bored, and we kind of switch into this insanity mode, that those rules are a lot easier to break. But if we set these cues and we're consistent in them, and we start with the small things and we just consistent over time, these rules become like, yeah, we don't do that at our house. And it's not weird. It's not hard, because it's just who we are. And it flows out of, last week I talked about, it flows out of our identity. You know, your house, we don't talk like that. It's not just because, like, oh, that word is naughty or that word's stupid, right? It's like, no, because we love each other and we prioritize each other. We don't lie because it hurts the other person. And so it's like, oh, because of the value we have and because of what we believe in our identity and all that kind of stuff, we have these rules. And so it's not just don't have a potty mouth because poo-poo talk's not okay. It's, hey, we respect each other.
yeah, it's more about the hurting each other.
Yep.
It's more about the siblings and kid, all of the relationships in our house.
Yep.
Hurting each other.
Yep.
And we just follow the way of Jesus. So when I say we make rules, we go, this is what Jesus
Yep.
said. So even like real practically, there's conflict. People get hurt in my household relationally.
Just in your household. That's not.
Yeah, I'll just talk for the 5 of us. And it's like, hey, you need to go apologize to your sibling. Or I personally need to go apologize to one of the kids. And then instead of just saying, hey, I'm sorry, and stopping there, it's like you ask for forgiveness. Like, do you forgive me? And push that relational forgiveness, because we have to forgive each other as Christ has forgiven us, because that's who we are. Like, we, in our household, we follow Jesus. So then it requires, so if you just say you're sorry and then the other person goes, and just kind of shrugs or whatever, and there's not a relational response,
Yeah.
you don't really necessarily know where you stand.
Yeah.
And say,
Are we moving on from this?
yeah,
or is
are
this-
we okay?
Yeah.
Like, do you forgive me? And then to require of the other person to be at that place where they forgive, meaning you don't owe me anything else, and we've restored relationship. We're fine now.
And I don't
And
owe
we
you
can
anything.
move.
You can't hold this above my head.
Correct.
Because I owned it and I apologized and I was wrong. And, what do you want my pound of flesh or whatever it is, right? And it's unhealthy. Like, can we move on from that? So I don't owe you anything now,
Right.
because I'm owning my part, and I'm paying the penalty by, humbling myself and saying sorry and whatever it is. So Yeah, super
And
good.
so when that conflict cue shows up, it's like, okay, here's our we're cycling into a forgiveness habit. It sometimes takes hours or days or it's a whole thing. Sometimes it takes a couple minutes, but we're going, okay, we care about each other too much and love each other too much and want to honor God so much with our lives that we're going to fight through and figure out how to restore relationship and like, hey, you need to go talk to that so and so. Like, you're all upset. You guys need to work it out. And we'll mediate as parents, age appropriate. We'll mediate as necessary, but you guys need to work it out. Because I'm always like, these are the only siblings you got, so figure it out. Like, we really talk about the future self. Like, when you guys are like 80 years old, do you want to have a relationship, it's healthy and good and connected or not? And they're like, yeah, I guess we do. Like, this is your only sister. You got to be nice to her. Plus, she helps you, like, do your hair and have like good, like clothes.
Make sure you smell nice.
Right, exactly. Like, Hayden, you need to put on deodorant. So it's
Yeah.
helpful to find
and again,
these cues.
as we kind of ripple that out and those ramifications in our own life for those choices that we're making, right? That beyond ourselves, and because that's a really good example. We talked a lot about that because but even the choices we make daily and the habits that we have affect other people as well. But they affect who we're becoming. So sometimes we like to think like, oh, my choice or my bad habit's not really affecting anyone. It totally is, and it's affecting who you're becoming and the relationships you have in the future. So setting those cues with your daily life, with simple things about what are you spending your time doing, what are you avoiding spending time doing, and how is that building into the person that you want to be. And again, hey, we're a family that follows Jesus and loves Jesus and want to have a relationship. What kind of person do you want to be in the future? I want to be a person who's following Jesus and loving people well and using my time wisely, stewarding my gifts wisely, stewarding my physical health and my resources. So I'm going to set up some cues that here's how I spend my money. Here's what I give to. Here's what I spend money on. Here's what I save. All those types of things. Here's what I eat. Here's, all of those things that seem so like mundane and routine, but are just so vital in setting the stage for the future that we would desire to live in, and beyond that, the future that God would desire and that would glorify God in the future.
Yeah. So, like, for us too, one of the things is we just say it's the way of Jesus. Like, we don't own any of this stuff. We just get to take care of it for a while. And so then we just try to live into that. But it's helpful to say it out loud. I don't know if I shared on the podcast, but when our new friend was staying in her van out front of the house, that's just something we literally said out loud to her, like on day one. It's like, hey, this is not, we don't view this as our stuff, primarily. It's like, it's God's stuff. So the washing machine, the shower, the Wi-Fi, like, we just can share it. We do get like first dibs, like on the car most days. But like, hey, someone needs to borrow a vehicle. Like, cool. We'll make it work. We'll figure it out. And so that's just something I think is super helpful in how do I do this self-control thing? How do I have self-discipline? How do I follow the way of Jesus in a practical level? Is everybody listening in have these things? Yep. So maybe you just need to slow down enough to identify it. Maybe you, with the people you live with your spouse, your kids, just go, okay, yeah. This is who we are. This is what we do. When we have this cue, and just say it out loud. It reinforces it. It's probably stuff you're already doing. Yep. And then begin to intentionally go, okay, but who else do we want to become?
Yep.
And so we need to go, okay, this is what we need to do as a family. Like, here's our cues first thing in the morning, or here's our annual thing, and we're usually pretty good with it. Like, here's another cue. Birthday's coming up. We have traditions. We have things we do to celebrate people. For the most part, all of us, it's a cue for us when like Compassion sends us a thing in the mail, like, hey, your child's birthday's coming up. Do you want to send them an extra like birthday gift? And you want to write them a birthday note? And that's like on our agenda, like it's on the board right now. Wyatt was the other day. He's like, Dad, we have not done that. I'm like, yeah, we gotta do that. We gotta write the note. Like, we sent the financial gift, but we got birthday November and December for two of our Compassion kids, and like, yeah, we gotta love, and we gotta have these cues that go, yeah, that's who I want to be. That's what I want to do. I just need to follow through on it, and these different rules and cues of the way of Jesus help us to live into that. And as we look back, we'll go, glad we did that. Glad we do that.
Yeah, and again, I think that a lot of us believe the lie that, again, Scott, like you said, that this is something we all have and are capable of. I think it's Craig Groeschel who says he gets asked a lot because he's got some keystone habits and some really strong habitual things that he does, and he says he gets all the time. You're so disciplined. I could never be as disciplined as you. And he's like, you got to reject that lie. Like, I'm not more disciplined. It's not like something that just happens naturally. Like, I choose to do these things and you can too. And you are disciplined in a lot of the things that you do. It's just you set these cues and you got to be wise with how you're setting them and what you're doing and those rules. And so I think that anyone goes, oh yeah, I'm just not that self-controlled like you, Scott. You run all the time. I couldn't. Like,
I don't run as much as people think I run in their head.
Okay.
I'll
So
just
whatever your thought
bust
is,
whatever you think it is, reduce that.
gotcha.
100%.
But people would think like, oh well, Scott, you're so disciplined. You ran an Ironman. I could never do that. I'm not as disciplined as you. And it's
And I'd be like, you're right.
right in that. Yeah, I don't have that that sort of.
And
Yeah,
if you
anyway.
believe that to be true, just go spectate at the finish line between hours like 14
Oh,
and
yeah.
17.
Oh yeah.
And you'll be like, they finished?
Oh, for
and they're
sure.
finishing? And she's finishing?
You'll-
That's my grandma
Yeah, you go
out
to
there.
it and you go, that guy. I'm
He's
in
been
better
out-
shape than that guy.
That guy, he's 15 hours he's been out here doing this thing, and he's finishing.
Yeah.
Yep, that guy.
Yeah. So that again, I think that lie we have to start with and just get that out of there. Going like, you are a person that is fully capable of self-control, and if you're following Jesus, this is the fruit of the Spirit that He produces in your life. So stop saying that. Like it's not helpful.
Yeah, because you're taking away from what God can actually do
Yep.
in your life. Because again, if it's those kind of statements, feels like to me, for most people, it's on the side of like, it's all me. So I'm either doing it or not doing it. And like, well, God's at work and work with Him. And there's a power of supernatural thing going on. And, it shows up in so many different ways, just like even practically the other day, like our walk-in closet was just messy. And there was stuff that had been laying. And Amy'd been getting on me, like my portion, my side, like there's just stuff on the ground. And it's a mix of like dirty clothes, clean clothes, workout clothes, clothes that like I don't wear these anymore, need to give away, and just hadn't taken action. So I forget she was gone, and so like I cleaned up and she came home. I'm like, hey, check out the closet, huh? And then she like a couple days later, she took some of the stuff she needed to give away, and she's like, I took the stuff out of the closet and stuff out of the garage, took it down and donated it, and it was like clean. It felt really good, and she's like, oh, she was going to grab some of my clothes or something. She was putting it in the closet. She's like, I don't want to put these down because I'm afraid they're going to be there for like 2 years. and I made the excuse. I was like, listen, the pandemic hit all of us a little differently, okay? And she was laughing.
I hoarded clothes.
And I said, that's my excuse, and I'm sticking with it. And you talked a lot about that this last Sunday, just these excuses and we all have them.
Yep.
And for the most part, we lead with like, I don't have time. But I have time for these other things I want to do, but I don't have time for that. And we all have time.
Yep.
And we all have ability to tackle things we want to actually do. You and I, we figure out how to get around to golf in. We'll figure that out because we're motivated. It's fun most of the time. And we're glad that we went most of the time. But for all of us, like, okay, you want to follow Jesus? You want to live differently? You want to be, the light and the love in the world, and how you interact at your workplace and with, friends, and how you live with your family? Like, yeah, we all have time. It takes that intentionality to do it. So through this process, did something like new come out for you, or did something like just hit you at a new layer? Stuff would just, you're like, I've heard that before. I believe that. I've even lived that. But how stuff just gets to a different level of like, oh, that is deeper in my gut, in my soul. And it just is like settles in.
Yeah, well, I referenced it this last week. I mean, it puts you under a microscope as a person when you're going to spend 5 weeks telling hundreds of other people how to be self-controlled or this biblical truth, no matter what it is, whatever we do, right? But for the last month, really been talking about self-control and cues. So it's really been, again, for me, it's been super helpful to put my life under a microscope and what are those things that I do without even thinking about those cues. I talked about it last week. So I did some practical stuff. I set some app limits on my phone because you would think like, oh, I'm never on Facebook for a half hour a day. And then you're like, my time limit's already up. I just got up, right?
What is happening?
Like, what am I doing?
And then how much have you found yourself going, oh, okay, let me justify that. There's a reason, like,
yeah,
I had to look this thing up, or you know what I mean? We
Oh,
get
yeah,
like,
for
oh,
sure.
there was a work thing, or somebody commented on like Mission Church page. So I had to look at that.
Yeah.
You're like, wait, what?
So just really thinking through those things, for me, those subconscious things I just find myself doing that are not beneficial, not bad, just not beneficial. So again, stuff I've known, but just really settled with me this week. Like, okay, why am I choosing to do those things at work? How am I really being self-controlled? And I'm in a new season of life, figuring out, not only new parenthood, but this new role as lead pastor, like how I manage my time and when I'm doing my speaking schedule and I have Fridays off and, all of that type of stuff. So how am I spending my time? How am I devoting my time and energy there? So I don't know if it was really crazy new light bulb moments, but really, really solidifying. And like you said, Scott, next level of, okay, how am I managing this? How am I noticing these cues? And so I think God showed me a little bit of, why are you picking up your phone right there? Why are you going to this thing at this time? Why are you, finding yourself in these cues? And let's use them and reuse them for beneficial things. And getting in the Word of God for the last couple of years, I've changed some transitional things for me in the morning, which I'm not normally a morning guy, and it's been super helpful for me. So yeah.
James 3:1, not many of you should presume to be teachers, my brothers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. And James is like, I'm sure he's getting after, because he was a teacher, he was a leader in the early church, and people were looking at him. I think those, and many of us teach, so people listening in, it's just not just in a pastoral
Not
role.
just those preachers.
Yeah, because you get it not just from others. Like I think James he's getting into the how we use our tongue and our words with others, but he's getting into like your own life. Like it's going to be hard for you to have, was it cognitive dissonance? Is that right? Where you're like living one way and
Just
teaching.
talking about this.
Yeah, he's
I'm
like
gonna tell you how to be self-control while I'm wildly
out of control.
Yeah.
Yeah,
With my.
he's like. He's talking about others for sure on the outside.
For sure.
But I think too, it's getting to the point of like you're gonna have a hard time with yourself and with the Holy Spirit in your heart going, yeah, you're gonna be judging yourself. Like you can't be just saying, you can't talk the talk without walking the walk.
And the spiritual element to that is just, I can't overstate it. Just and this isn't just teaching people about it or doing these things, but as God starts to reveal stuff into you, if you know this, if you've like ever been like, hey, we got a marital issue and we need to figure this out. And
we don't.
Not you and I don't.
Motion to me if you're watching.
Well, you and I
we are not married.
Okay, that's true.
Although it feels like at times there's
we
some
do see each other
marital,
very frequently.
Conflict.
If you've ever been in a relationship, it doesn't even have to be marriage, but I think that it's a good example that if you've had a marital conflict and you go, hey, I want to lean into actually loving you well and to fix this and to move closer to you and closer to Jesus, and you make some of those wise decisions to do that, and the spiritual element that's there, the lies that you start to believe, those choices that you make to start to get healthy, and the spiritual attack that's there, it's just a huge part of it. So to be aware, like when we're moving in the direction of God, God has us and it's got us in control, but there's a spiritual enemy that does not want that to happen.
Such a dude comment. We have a marital issue and we're gonna fix this.
Did I say that?
Yeah, you're like, we need to fix this.
I did
Here's
not mean
the
to say that.
solution.
We're gonna lean into this together.
No,
we're gonna move.
There's an oil leak and we're gonna fix it.
We're gonna move towards each other
tighten the
because it's easy.
All the ladies are like, don't stop. Don't try to fix
Not
it.
trying to fix.
Just,
trying to fix me, not my
not
wife.
a project. It's
Yeah, it's not a project.
Your point is still valid. I just was.
Yeah, I mean,
Couldn't-
just again that aspect of moving towards Jesus is the way, and it's the way that God has for us. And
Absolutely. And I found myself through these last few weeks. Again, what was kind of not new, was just a new layer of how important the everyday, quote unquote, little things are. Like the reality of life is just the compilation of 1,000 decisions throughout the year. Think about it. It's just like 2 decisions a day. Yep, I'm going to do this and I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to do this and not do that today. I'm going to do this, and that's 1,000, decisions over the course of a year, and then over the older you get, the more perspective you have. You're like, oh yeah, 25 years. Okay, it's I'm going to do this and not that. It's not I've only made the decision to get married one time. Great decision, but I'm not making that decision every year, every day. So it's hey, how am I going to respond to my kids? How am I going to be present? I'm going to choose to be present this way with my kids, and how I'm going to, have this cue that sets off this habit cycle. And so
You made the decision to get married once, but you make thousands of decisions to stay married every day.
yeah,
That's good.
No,
Right there.
that's
That's
I
good.
know. I thought that.
Right?
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
uh,
And we say that tool. We say that as well out loud all the time. Amy and I do, and we joke around, but we're serious. Like, till death, baby. This is it. Divorce is not an option.
Yep.
And we just say that out loud. It's not like, oh, is it looming in the background? Can we just one of us threaten like I'm gonna walk out. I'm gonna separate. It's I'm gonna play this power card. Like, no, it's just not an option because it's the way of Jesus. Like, committed. And the kids are getting older, and so we intentionally let them participate, if you will, as spectators in some of our arguments and conflicts and fights, because it involves them sometimes, and they need to see a healthy relationship have conflict, and we'll circle back around many a times as a group. I'll circle around back with the boys and say, hey, you saw Mom and I talking, and it was heated, and there was conflict. We love each other. We're fighting for the same things. We're committed to follow each other. I want them to see, not just hear about, but see how to respect a lady and a woman, even when there's disagreement. So they need to see some of that, and so it's obviously appropriate topics, and we have a lot of wisdom and all that, but it's just the reality of the everyday little decision. Hey, we're gonna have conflict, but we're gonna keep choosing. We're gonna say out loud, divorce is not on the table. We're gonna work it out. We're gonna forgive each other. We're gonna love each other.
Yep.
And then our kids see us kiss, and like make up. Not too much, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's gross. It's gross. But yeah, seeing all that. It's all those little decisions.
All those
it's
little
the
decisions.
5-minute fight in the kitchen as people are hangry and we're rushing around and schedule's busy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how do we treat each other in that moment is the thousands of decisions that add up. And so to be intentional about that. That's when it's been new layer of like deep in the gut. Like, yep, that is so vital.
Yeah.
It's so important.
That stat I threw out a couple weeks ago, just Duke University did a study in 2006, and they said about 40% of your day is just made up of habits. It's not conscious choice. It's not something and psychology does studies a lot with, excuse me, conscious versus unconscious choices that we're making. And habits just become those things that I'm not using and exerting willpower to make this choice. It's just something I do. And they said up to 40% of what we do in our day is just unconscious decision making. We're not exerting willpower, thinking through it, and tiring our mind and our self-control to do it. It's a habit. 40%, almost half of our day. This is just what we do. Our rules and our things, this is what we do, and it's a habit. And those little things, they add up, and it's huge.
And it feels, we feel that. We were talking about this at community group the other night. We feel it when we go against some of those things. Like, that takes more work, if you will. Man, my mouth is really warmed up today. When you're like, wait, this feels different. Like, we're choosing intentionally to maybe move away from, hey, just the season of life is requiring something different. Or, hey, what we were handed from our family, our biological family, our parents, was maybe good, but maybe it needs to be tweaked to make it better for our family and our kids. So it takes some intentional work because you feel like you're moving away from who you are because it's so ingrained to deal with it. And maybe as you're providing new habits, like you're getting more intentional with your finances and go, hey, future self. Like, one of our rules for Amy and I is like, if it's not in the budget and it's a bigger item, we got to talk about it. You neither one of us can just go, oh, I just went and bought this $500 thing and here we go. I'm sure you'd be happy, right? Like, no. We talk about it. And then once it's planned, have a way with it. Like, here's some clothes money for kids. They need new shoes or pants or leggings. Girls need black leggings every other week.
Oh yeah,
I didn't know this. I get the black leggings are always in need. It's
sounds about right.
I didn't know.
Just looking around at this landscape of the world.
Yeah, you're like
Goes with everything.
You need
right?
another pair of black leggings. Oh, this one is back pocket. This
It's
one
different,
is
yeah.
These are thicker, and these are for. Okay, sounds good. But
It's in the budget.
Once it's there, like clothes budget, great. I don't care. You know,
Maybe you guys
we've
need to build a
decided-
line item into your budget that's black.
No,
leggings
nope, not
into the
doing
budget.
it.
No?
no,
Okay.
we're not getting that. No. But yeah, once it's there, then boom, yeah, great. Fire away. I fire away on stuff, and then it's all fine. But if it's like outside of that, then we're like, hey, we got to get together and be on the same page, and that just reduces so much tension and conflict, and it helps us achieve our financial goals. And the future us will thank this present day. I get lost on all of the future.
Yeah,
us,
your
past
future
us.
self, your past, and now you're already in the future. Don't
Yeah.
worry about it. Just talk to.
But the reality
J.
of
Fox-
your
Michael J. Fox.
decisions catching up, and like that guy will deal with it. I'll push off my bad
Kick the can down the road,
choices
as they say.
to like the future Scott. He'll care. He won't care. He'll handle it. No, the same guy today is the same guy that's going to care to. I just heard the coolest, kind of sad but cool story. So a friend was able to kind of see, like the future self was able to see the past self.
I really don't know where you're going.
I know. I'm trying to set it up.
intrigued. Okay.
It was like a real life, like this confusing thing that we're trying to talk about. They had like a real life kind of almost out of body experience where they ran into someone at a store and they were able to see they were in a bad toxic relationship that was like going nowhere, like real bad. And they had to break away physically and separate and no contact and just make a tremendous life shift, like 180-degree transformation, right? Super hard, took months. It's been a year, and so it's like they were able to see somebody, the ex with another gal at a local store. They just bumped into each other, so they're able to see that could have been me and how the relationship looked from the outside. They were able to see kind of, oh, that's the way I did look and with person in where I'm at today versus where that person is currently. And it felt really personal, even though they didn't know exactly what's going on, but they could just see that perspective. It was kind of like a Jesus moment.
Yep. They were able to, that fork in the road where they chose this way, they kind of were able to say, hey, if I would have stayed down here, that was me.
Could have been me.
So they're
Yeah.
walking side by side in these alternate futures going,
Correct.
I made the hard choice and put in
Yeah.
the work, and if I didn't, I'd be in that spot.
Yeah.
And that would be my future self. Yeah.
It's like when we go back through photos in our phone or like photo albums. Do you guys have photo albums with the printed pictures?
My mom does. She keeps trying to give me. Every time I go to my mom's house, she tries to give me. Literally, I went to her house last week. She hands me a picture that my orthodontist took pre and post braces. 14-year-old couch. She's like, do you want this? Pictures of me with this jacked up smile. I go,
Hey, see, that's the future self. That's the perspective thing right there. You
Yeah.
have them right together.
why did you save this, Mom?
It's
And
20
no,
years
I
old.
do not want this.
But yes, sometimes we can get that perspective
yeah.
as we look back at ourselves. Like, oh, there's a picture of me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or this season of my life, or a video.
Yeah,
clip,
or you
like,
see that
oh,
that friend group that I was hanging out with, or that season I was doing these things, and you think back through those, like, man, I wonder if I was still doing that job that I had, right? You remember, you're like, oh, I was working there, and I really didn't enjoy it. I wasn't in my sweet spot. I wasn't using my giftings. I was making money, but that's it, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, those types of things that we're able to look at on the other side of them. And so how much of that today can we go, again, instead of being like, oh, I'm so glad I did that back then. What are those things that are happening today that we're making those and living in to our preferred future? And again, ultimately glorifying God and loving people really well.
And I'm always a little shocked, I think, for myself and with others, is when we think to the future and like, oh, the shift I want to make, the change I'm like, that's going to take forever. Oh, this is going to be so long. And then what's helpful, like we always think it's way longer and harder in the future. Then when you look back, you get some perspective and you're like, that's only been like 4 months we decided to do, it's different. Or like, that's only been a year ago. Wow, it really have changed in a year and it doesn't feel so big and daunting and heavy. Or man, 2 years ago, I would have never thought this or been like this. People that like in our world, like jump into a community group, a small group of some kind, jump into a freedom group and like, they're like 8 weeks in. They're like, oh my goodness, this has been dramatic. Like, it's only been 8 weeks? Wow. It's not 20 years all the time. It's not this, generational thing. It's 6 months ago, I decided to do this, and then here's where we're at. Or, like, in our marriage, we decided, like, 3 years ago, after being married for 15 years, like, and it's drastically changed. We decided to, like, really get connected to Jesus and his way and following him at church and get connected to other people, and it's really changed our lives. Like, and it's not as long and as big as when we look into the future. Like, it's daunting and we can't do it.
I read this in my message, but this was just something that I thought was so eye-opening to me that helps us to think through this. So what you're saying, Scott, both of us, bro.
Red Leather Unique New York.
We didn't do our vocal
did not
warm-ups.
do vocal cues.
The difference between our bad habits and these good habits that we want to do and change that we've been talking about. The difference between a good habit, because a good habit is difficult to start and a bad habit's difficult to break. Because here I read this. Good habits, typically they're challenging at first, and the perceived payoff, the payoff or the win, is somewhere in the future, right? Yep. And so we're like, oh, it's hard to start now, and the payoff isn't until down the road. Where a bad habit, on the other hand, the perceived benefit, which is obviously negative, the perceived benefit is immediate, but the negative payoff isn't until the future. So I can kick the can down the road there. And so this dynamic that's backwards, that no, like these good habits that I want. I mean, I think like working out and going to the gym and eating right is a really easy thing to think about because I stepped on the scale the next day and I didn't lose any weight. But I'm doing this and I put in the hard work. Why didn't I lose weight today? And the perceived benefit. It's hard today to wake up early and go to the gym. It's hard to drive to the gym and put in the work. And I don't see the benefit until later. But the same is true as like if I eat 2 double cheeseburgers for dinner, it was really good. And I got that immediate payoff. And I stepped on the scale. I didn't gain a pound tomorrow. So what's the point? Why would I go to the gym and not eat a box of donuts?
Because at my age, you feel it like in about 40 minutes. You're like
the next morning you wake up, you have that at dinner, and then you wake up the next morning.
Why'd I do that? That's
but
bad.
Immediately you don't. You're like, oh, it's great. Oh,
yeah.
Not so good.
When you're like 15, 25 years old, you can just pound like
Taco Bell every
donuts.
night.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, it's fine. Now it's like 12 minutes later, like, this is a bad idea.
What did I do?
This is horrible.
Milk was a bad idea.
Dude, you can't eat 4 fresh baked donuts from Gross Donuts. They're super good. If you eat them in halves, it doesn't count anyways. You're just like taking
so
bites.
So you ate 8 halves, you're good.
Yeah, it doesn't add up to 4.
See, that's not my problem. I don't struggle with donuts.
Anyways.
But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's the immediate, the long term. That's
but
really
then
good.
Again, I when you look back, you go, oh yeah, that is a month to 2 months, 8 weeks. All those things, they add up and they're significant. And you look and you go, because we say it all the time, you blink and it's like, wait, where did this year go? And it's like, man, I lost, where'd that 20 pounds go? Like I felt like yesterday I stepped on the scale and it didn't. Yeah, you're putting in the work and you're doing the things and you know that the payoff is there and self-control is important and Jesus will help you with that.
Yep. Well, as we land the plane here, I know God's speaking to all of us on what is it for you that are some of these cues, some of these rules that you already do that you just need to say, yep, that's who we are. That's who we're becoming. That's who God has designed us to, to live, to be, and to take advantage of that. And at the same time, there's stuff for all of us that like God, the way of Jesus and what God's saying to us, he's nudging your spirit right now. Like, yep, we're going to stop that. We're not going to do that. We're going to do less of that. Because it's healthier, it's the way of Jesus. And so just to take action on it, to go ahead, like begin to make these changes. And again, it might be difficult in the moment, but long-term you'll be grateful, you'll be thankful, and you're following Jesus. The Holy Spirit's guiding you, leading you. So just take one of the things. Like sometimes you can feel like there's 87, there's 17. Like what's one of the things this week for you to follow Jesus, to change a habit, change the cue, and you had a great alliteration because we're pastors, so you gotta you had the replace or the like when you run into the cues, you can reuse it. I'm struggling here. You can bail me out anytime. You can reuse it, replace it. Do you remember? I'm putting you on the spot here.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Now
So
I'm focusing on the R's now, and I can't.
You can, when you run into a cue,
Remove.
I
was like, what's
there
the?
it
I was
is.
like, you got to reject it. It's not reject. You remove or replace or reuse the cue, right?
Yes.
So, because some of those things we can get them out of our life.
Yeah.
That person that relationship is bad. Every time I hang out with that group of friends, we go to this place. Every time I go to that website, whatever, we can remove those.
The way you drive home, maybe there's a street corner, a place, a business that is like triggers, and you're like, I should pull in here. I should go this. That reminds me of that time. Just drive a different way.
Yeah, so you can remove them. Sometimes we can't, right? It's
Correct.
that certain time of the day.
It's
I
that
walk out the
person.
door. Yeah.
You can't.
That
remove.
person, I'm not removing you.
Yeah, we live together.
Right. So you can replace it, right?
Yes.
The example I give, like every morning I walk out the door and it's like that fresh air. I want to smoke a cigarette or something, right? I want to go every night when I come home. I sit on the couch. I want to drink a beer. Like, okay, well I can't remove that, but I can reuse that cue. I walk out the door, that fresh breath. I'm gonna take a walk. That I sit down on the couch. I'm gonna open my Bible. I'm gonna reuse that cue, and then now that cue is transitioned to a beneficial habit, something I want to do, something my future self will thank me for. So yeah, remove it if you can. If you can't remove it, replace it or reuse it to something beneficial.
Absolutely. So take advantage of that. Get after it this week. Follow Jesus. You'll be glad you did. Have a great time this week doing that, and we'll check in with you next time.